friends, I'm Courtney and welcome to my channel. If you haven't already watched it, please feel free to check out my June TBR where I go over the 8, 10, a certain amount of books that I plan to read for the month and share what I'm excited about them. Also, feel free to head over to my social media channels on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram where I put a lot more content on a more frequent basis than here on BookTube, which is usually once a week. So today I am going to share my May, even though we're a week or so into June. Better late than ever, but I think I read 5 print and 5 audiobooks, so 10. Great at math, awesome. That brings me up to about 44 books for the year, and I think it was a pretty good reading month, and I had mentioned a few times in a couple of my reviews, which I'll link below as well, that some of them were probably my top picks read this month out of the whole year so far. I know it's only 5.5 months in, but it's been pretty good, so I will get to what those are. First book is Half-Life by Jillian Cantor, and this is a speculative fiction, I guess, of Marie Curie if she didn't choose the path of science immediately and chose love instead. So it kind of goes back and forth between like her actual path, as much as we know about it in like a fictional kind of form, and then the path that was not taken, but like the what if. So I love this book. This was gifted to me by Harper Perennial, so I gave it a 5 out of 5 after reading it and loved it. And I wasn't really big in like science, but it doesn't really focus too much on the science. Like I think it gives a good education of her work and like her contribution to the periodic table of elements and all that, but it goes beyond that. It goes to like her dedication, her research, like her commitment to it, and like the relationship she's made, and not just like in the actual world where she lived and like took a path towards science, but in her alternate life where she chose love, she gravitated towards science anyway, which I thought was pretty cool. Like in the end, she kind of had both, no matter which path she took. So amazing, amazing book. Feel free to pick this up. Then we have Conversation with Friends by Sally Rooney, and this I read for a buddy read. I can't remember what the exact name of it was called, like the theme of it, but it was basically reading books that like in with the old, out with the new. I don't know, something like that, where reading like backlisted kind of books that aren't like in the limelight or like new releases or anything. So read this. I think I was like one of 2 groups broken in like an Instagram group that we chatted about it, but yeah, I had mixed feelings, and it's interesting because from what I've heard from people who've read this and Normal People, you either love one and like not the other, or like have very strong feelings. And because I read Normal People first, I think that's why I have that emotion where I liked Normal People better. This I thought was good. Like her style is very evident, like you can tell what her style is in both of the books that she's written. But this follows Frances and Bobby, who are 2 women who grew up together. They dated each other, but like have remained friends after the breakup and everything. But it just has a lot of like toxic and unhealthy relationships, not just between them, but between like this married couple that they get involved with, like personally, physically, socially, whatever. And it's just super, super unhealthy. So that I wasn't a fan of, even though I know that happens. But in the end, like I feel like there wasn't a resolve. Like I don't mean to put spoilers out there, so I apologize. I just felt like there was no resolve. Like there was all this buildup of like, we're gonna do better, we're gonna do great, and then it was, let's fall back into these old habits that are comfortable but not healthy. So that is what I didn't like about it. Even though I know that is very real, it just left me so unsettled at the end. So yeah, I think they were both very complex characters, which I think is fantastic. But I think I gave this a 3 or 3.5 out of 5. Next we have The 100 Years of Lenny and Margot by Marion Cronin. So this is by far my favorite book of 2021 at this point in time, whatever date this is. In my time, it is June 4th. By the time we're watching this, I think it's June 7th of 2021. So we'll put that down on paper, recorded, got it. Anyway, this was gifted to me by Harper Perennial a few months ago, and this was released June 1st, so very recent release, and I absolutely adored and loved this book. It had very similar feels to like a John Green novel, but the friendships, the relationships, the legacy left behind for this novel I thought was so much more I don't know, more relatable. I mean, like, it could relate to young adult lives, but basically the premise is Lenny is a 17-year-old girl in the terminal ward of the hospital with, I don't think they say what form of cancer or disease that she has, and then she meets an 83-year-old woman named Margot, who I think she is just elderly, or like just coming to the end of her life in general. But anyway, they form a friendship, and they come up with the idea that both of their years together equal 100, and they kind of detail each of their years in some kind of artistic way that's going to be put up in a gallery in the hospital. But along the way, we learn both of their stories leading up to them meeting, and like as their relationship builds, and it's just so beautiful, so amazing. It's funny, it's sarcastic, mainly Lenny, but then Margot, you see everything that she's gone through with like her growing up, her relationships, her marriage, her husband leaving her dating a younger woman in London, and it was just fantastic. I like don't want to spoil it, but it is kind of sad at the same time. But I think you can expect that with such like a beautiful story, it can still be sad. So yes, just go read it. It's phenomenal. Then we have The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and this was the selection for the Late Night Book Club's pick for May, but they have since decided not to cover it because of a lot of issues coming out when it comes to 60 Scoop and everything happening up in Canada with finding the children in like a mass grave and everything. So I don't know, I've listened to a lot of commentary or critiques on both sides of the fence of him getting inspiration, but also like giving like a happier, more positive outlook or story to children that were kind of like not fitting in, or like kind of forced to change in a way. But in general, I thought the story was amazing in terms of like the creativity, the fantasy elements of it, the LGBTQ aspect of it as well. But I could kind of see the like white savior element in there. I didn't think it was that strong, but I definitely noticed it. But I did give it a 4 out of 5, and yeah, like I think I'm still open to hearing conversation for and against the story, the plot, the author's liberties and freedom to write this kind of story. But overall, I leaned more towards, like, I think it was a positive rendition or story that showed a lot about inclusivity and like embracing everyone for who they are. The last print book I read was Black Buck by Mateo Oscariport, and this was my May reading vlog selection, so I will post that up here for you to click on and listen. I was going to say read. Hear, watch me discuss more about it, but basically this goes over a young man named Darren who takes a job in a startup entrepreneur kind of company, and he was working in a Starbucks and was like doing okay. He was like the store manager or like shift manager or something like that, but then he begins to change as like the only black man in this company, and is getting called on because of like being diverse and like being the face of diversity in a lot of different situations. So he basically starts his own like training program for other diverse or minorities in the area to make them like stronger, more confident in the workforce. So amazing story about racial equality in the industries and the careers around at least the US, but I think broadly as well. Then we have the audiobooks I read listened to this past month. So the first one was The One. So this was the third book in the selection series by Keira Cass, and not also trying to not give spoilers away, but this kind of marked an ending of America's, which is the main characters in the story's like time or story, and then the two others, which I didn't know in the series, are like in the future, some 15, 20-ish years maybe, which I'm like kind of hesitant because I'm like, I'm not usually a fan when stories do that, when they like skip ahead that much, because I'm like, did they just do that to get another book or another series or whatever out there? But I might just continue it. Like, they're enjoyable, they're fast, they're like interesting because it's like post-apocalyptic and like fantasy-esque, so I'm on the fence. Even though it is audio, like I can get those in pretty quickly. I have a huge audio book list based off Modern Mrs. Darcy's summer reading guide, that I like want to dig into it when those are available, so we'll have to see on that. And I also have like a companion novel that was gifted to me off my wish list, so I don't know, I'll have to go back to that series later, but I'm happy with how it ended. I just don't want to keep going in like a good way, like stop while you're ahead kind of way, but who knows. Then I read Hot British Boyfriend by Kristy Boyce. This, I don't know if it was because of the narrator or because it was so predictable, but I gave it a 2 out of 5, which is probably the lowest rating I've given so far this year. I might have DNF'd a couple of books, but as for the ones I finished, this is by far the lowest one. And this is about a girl who was like embarrassed in like a high school party or something, and like got this opportunity to study abroad in England, just outside of London, for a semester, which I'm like, that's kind of cool. How could I have done that as a high schooler? That seems amazing. But anyway, she goes with like a bunch of other classmates who she didn't really know too well, and then they become friends as they like take classes together, and then she meets these 2 British guys and starts like dating one of them as like a way to be like, oh, I'm thriving, I'm surviving in a different place, like to kind of like snub the people that made fun of her and like the act that happened back in high school in America. But yeah, it was like painfully predictable. Like I think for a younger reader it would be good, and I love young adult books, like for sure, but I think this one was a little too childish. Like I hate saying that, but like for my tastes and where I'm at right now, I think it was a little bit too, like I said, predictable, and like seeing the mistakes that she made, like I remember being that young, I made those mistakes too, so I guess it's realistic, but also like we could have seen that one coming. But yeah, like it was a cute, fun, quick story, but just didn't hit home for me. Then I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and this is number 1, I think, out of a duology. At least there are 2, or like a second one's about to be coming out. I think it's called These Violent Ends, and it was interesting. It was a 1950s Romeo and Juliet retelling set in Shanghai, but it added like a sci-fi-ish twist to it. Like there's like this virus going around through like this monster of some sort, and Roma and Juliet are like used to date and like had their own history, and like now they're still enemies of enemy families or whatever, but they kind of team up behind other people, like the rest of their family's backs, to try to figure out what's going on here. So I thought it was interesting. Like I like retellings like that where it has a different spin on it, so I thought it was very creative and like very engaging. Then we had Breaking Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. So this was the first in the League of Extraordinary Women. Yes, that is the series. And I had seen what I'm currently reading now on audiobook, A Rogue of One's Own, in the bookstore, but I didn't realize it was like a series or like connected. But the Breaking Down the Duke was the first in this kind of world, so I wanted to read that first, and I loved it. It's all about like women's suffrage in London, but like also like there's some romance and like sex and all that kind of stuff thrown in there. But I like the historical. I guess I was in it for the historical fiction part. So I haven't really read too many romance novels, and I think this was a good like dipping my toes in the water kind of thing. And yeah, I'm already enjoying this. The one I'm reading now is about like a publishing house where a woman takes over that and has like joint ownership with another duke or like nobility man in like parliament, government, whatever. And yeah, I just think it's interesting to learn about like women's suffrage at that time, but also like some fun fictional elements of like relationships. It's also fun to see like what, if this was accurate, like what the standards were, or like how women had to act, or like what education meant for them. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And the last book, at like the last hour, was it the 11th hour, whatever that term is, was Call Me By Your Name by André Aciman. And this is also an adaptation, which I would like to see that as well. But this is about 2 men. One is like, I guess like an older teen with his family, and like they take guests in every year. I think they're like American students studying or whatever. And so one guy, I think he's like 24, comes in, and then they start a relationship that's very, I think it's built on like not liking each other at first, but then it grows into something deeper, but also very complicated and somewhat unhealthy in some elements. And it like fast forwards after, I think it's only like 6 weeks or so. It's a short amount of time that they're together while the older man is there. Oliver is there visiting or like staying while he's studying and working and everything. But they also fast forward and like talk about their relationship in the future and what that means for them, what they're up to and all that. So I thought that was a cool element where like we see them for this long stint of time, and then I guess that is the time I like when things are fast forwarded because it's the same characters, but you see how much they've changed or not in that amount of time. So yeah, that one I gave about a 3 out of 5. It was a little slow, and it might have been the narrator, but I definitely want to see the adaptation. Alright, so those are the books I read for May. Like I said, I'm at 44 books for the whole year. I'm 2 books ahead of schedule for like my reading challenge. I said I was going to do about 100 books for the year. Who knows? I'm on track. We're ahead, which is fine, but I know things come up, like some months are slower than others, which is totally fine, and we'll just have to see. I like seeing those different points that I reach, but it's not like I have to reach 100 or like something bad's going to happen, because it's my own pressure I'm putting on myself, and that is all. So yeah, let me know in the comments below books that you read for the past month, what you're excited to read for June. If you're taking part in the Rory Gilmore reading challenge, let me know about that. That's what, oh, I didn't mention that. So the books I have for that, I had Black Buck, which was the book about business or insurance based off of Richard Gilmore. And then Half-Life was about a mother-daughter relationship like Lorelai and Rory, even though not even the same kind of relationship in Half-Life with Marie Curie and her children in both worlds that she had going on. So yeah, we're almost done that. We're in the last month of that challenge. I'll be posting, I'm thinking I'm going to do something a little bit different, like my new job and just like getting back out into the real world. Like I'm fully vaccinated, ready to do like more social things with other vaccinated folks and just be out and about. It's kind of affecting how much time I'm able to put into like reading and like getting stuff ready for you all. So I definitely want to do that, but I also don't want to be like running and like running on all cylinders. Is that the phrase? I told you I'm bad at phrases like that. So I might do something a little bit different. It might not be like a whole 3-month challenge. It might be shorter and like in terms of time, not 3 months, maybe a week, maybe a weekend, and like not as many prompts. So let me know if you're into that, and if you have any suggestions. I have a theme in mind. I just need to flesh out some details. So if you're on my newsletter, feel free to sign up for that. If you aren't, but if you're on it already, I will be sending more details about that challenge in the next month or so, kind of, because I only send monthly newsletters now. So yeah, that's all I have for you all. Thank you again so much for watching. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below. Feel free to follow me, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get notifications of when I post next, usually on Mondays, if not Mondays, then Tuesdays. And yeah, I hope to talk to you again soon. So have a great day and happy reading.